everybody. My name is Nancy. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Does that make you sick? A grateful alcoholic. Well, I am. I'm really, really grateful to have alcoholism. And I'm really, really grateful to have a way of life that is better than anything I've ever encountered. But believe you me, I did not want a way of life when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was so arrogant, and I wore a bikini. But no, it wasn't like that. You have to hear the rest of it. I had a big black eye, I had a split lip, and I was huge from drinking. My body just gave out, and I just started to swell up. I just like a blowfish, I think they call those big fish. It was just drinking. And I perspired all the time. This was the beginning of my sobriety. The beginning of my sobriety is often what keeps me sober, because it was so awful to come here and be out of your mind. And the whole weird thing about all of that was that I thought I was terrific. I worried about people hitting on me. I mean, it was bad. I perspired all the time, even if it was air conditioned. You know, I just perspired all the time. It was just wine coming out. I ended up a big wine alcoholic. But I wasn't looking for sobriety when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't have any idea about what I was doing here when I got here. And I was really, really warmed tonight, by the people celebrating their anniversaries. That shush isn't for me, of course. Still sensitive after all these years. I was really, really touched by the birthdays tonight. Those anniversaries just made me sit right up. I thought, yeah, baby, AA is still working. There are still people coming in letting me know that it's no good out there for us, you know. And I think the anniversaries are very, very special in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the chips are all very important too. So I'm glad tonight is that night. It's good to share that. This meeting is pretty good too. And I'm sorry Michael and Maureen aren't here. I'm glad Ralphie's here. And they've done a great job for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love being invited to share, because I believe what they told me when I was new. They said, if you want to keep it, you got to give it away. I remember I've sponsored my first baby when I had 6 months. And she was a pillhead. And she had me running all over town doing errands for her. And I was just ahead of her in the book, you know, just reading ahead. Oh, yeah, that's what I'll say. But, you know, it was neat. I was needed and wanted and loved in AA. And I had been needed and wanted and loved anywhere for a long time before I got here. So it's always a privilege to come and share my experience in this program. Of course, we know that the expert how-to of recovery from alcoholism is in our book and our other literature. But, you know, it's always nice to hear how people apply these things. And I always enjoy hearing that. And so it's always kind of fun to share it with you. But anyway, I showed up here, didn't want to be here, had a black eye, had a split lip. I used to have this big black shiner. And it was kind of, I was a real crazy, you know, drunken woman alcoholic. But I knew symmetry, and so I hated having my eyes out of balance like that. So I put a lot of makeup on the other eye so that my eyes would match. And I mean a lot of makeup. You know, 'cause it's like a really... And then, of course, when you're shaking, your hand is doing this. You know, it's like, it was real easy to overdo it, you know. Then I'd have like these, then I have to go put makeup on the black eye so that I could get balance. And you go back and forth. How long are you going to do that? You know, it's just like, I went to my first meeting, and it was just like, I was eyes. I came to a meeting, I was eyes. The first feeling I remember in Alcoholics Anonymous was resentment. Surprise, surprise. But you know what I hated the most was when people would come up to me, and I had the eye, and I had this fat and this swing, and people would come up to me and they'd say, "Are you new?" I hated that. And it baffled me, and I thought, how do they know? How do they know? Because I was just wrapped up in my world, my own world of make-believe, which life is mental. Life is mental anyway. Of course, if you're broken, you have this mental illness, and you have a physical allergy, and you come and you're wrapped up in this world, and I really, honestly, did not know how you could have guessed that I was new, or a visitor. And look at me, I've got the eye, I've got all the makeup on, I'm fat, I'm sweaty. How could you know? And of course, I was unable to speak as a new person. I remember feeling tortured by sentences when I was new and I was in those meetings, and people would speak in sentences. Declarative statements were made all over the place, And some were asking questions, and some people would lapse into paragraphs and so forth. And I was too cool for such communication. I spoke the language of cool, which is only 4 words. And 3 of those words are wow. So an AA meeting was kind of cruel, but you could get into it, if you just sit back and let the language roll over you. I think the hard part was when they first took me to coffee shops after meetings to socialize me. And they'd squeeze you. We used to sit on these pink and orange upholstery at Denny's after the meeting, and get sober alcoholics. And you know how we do, yak, 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 yak. I mean, the sentences would start flying in the coffee shop, and it was like torture. It was just torture, because I'm an antisocial person. I have had to learn everything worth knowing about being on earth in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am not kidding you about that. I drank away the good stuff that my mom gave me and the nuns had given me. There was good stuff. My life, my family is a little broken family too, but there was a lot of good stuff. I'd received a lot of good before I started drinking. I drank it all away. I came in here and I was really nuts. And I really didn't know it. And I remember that as the higher power, we call God, patiently, gently revealed to me how defective I was, and it would be okay. It was like if we got to Alcoholics Anonymous and the curtain went up like Dorian Gray and there was this portrait of what you're really like, who could stand it? But God is very gentle and very loving, and the people and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous are invaluable to me as a recovered person. Invaluable. If it was just me and the steps and God, we'd get drunk. But with you and me and the steps, and the honesty and the open-mindedness and the willingness to use its tools of recovery, I have a chance today like I never had before this program. So it's pretty weird. So I came in and I was really reluctant. I was really fat and sweaty, had my black eye, had my attitude, my resentment, couldn't speak. And you said that you loved me. And it was unbelievable. I remember the first night that I was really scared, and I allowed myself to fall safely into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because, this is where you bring your failures, isn't it? This is AA, right? You take your successes to the Rotary Club, but in AA, you learn to fall safely. Save your life, save yourself here, and show the stuff that's not working for you. And I remember I had 5 days clean and sober when I first allowed you in. And I remember I woke up that morning of 5 days clean and sober, and God gave me this idea that people in Alcoholics Anonymous didn't necessarily own a box of incredible dope. And I thought, yeah. And I have this Hollywood Laurel Canyon box of dope, And I thought, oh, Yeah, people in AA probably don't keep boxes of dope in their houses. So I was a drama queen, and I thought, wow, I guess I better get rid of my dope. So I remembered that Jesus sold Judas, or Judas, Judas in the Bible sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. So now I had a price. So I called up one of my using pals. Actually, I only had, by the time I got sober in AA, which was 26 and a half years ago, I want to tell you before I forget, this is my 27th sober holiday season. Isn't it nice to be here during the holidays? All the world is crazy. People are knocking themselves out there to live and be impressive and buy and get all the great stuff. But we don't have to do that today. We don't have to fall for that. Because I always used to fall for that, trying to keep up. Trying to be a big deal. Fix myself with outside stuff. But anyway, so I decided I was going to sell this dope for $30 because Judas sold Jesus for $30. And I called this my only two companions the last couple years, or the last year or so of my drinking, were two gay guys. And they were drug addicts. And they didn't drink my wine. And they cleaned my house. I thought, what a great idea, right? And I didn't have to worry about appearances because they didn't bother me, either. So, oh, what a sad story. And one of these guys was a dope fiend, and so I called that guy, and I said, you can have this dope for $30, and he knew all about that box. I'll tell you, it was just like some corny movie where the phone is just put back in the cradle because we didn't have digital. Dropped it in. He's at the door. $30, and I hand him out the box. I shut the door, and I never heard from him again. He'd never called me up to see how I was doing. Did I miss my box? How were things going? I never saw or heard from that guy again. And that was 5 days. And that night, I had to go to a meeting because I just was spinning in and out of AA meetings. Everything, my whole world was gone around me. My career was over. My family was gone. Everything was gone. The only thing I had was I had a bit of money, but everything was gone. My ability to just stay sober for an hour was gone. And here I was 5 days without drink or drug. So that night I went to a meeting, and I went to a meeting that looked a lot like this meeting, full of bright-eyed folks with matching socks, and eyes that don't have to look away, and that's just a sweet recovery. I went to a meeting like that, and it was horrible to me. It was this crashing reality that I was in AA. I've skyrocketed into AA, The big rock star was in AA. It was so horrible to me. And our book talks about those times for an alcoholic when they can't picture life with or without alcohol. And that book says, and you will know loneliness like few people do. And I was in this big, cheerful meeting like this, and there's probably somebody here tonight who feels this loneliness that we get in a crowd. And I was there 5 days clean and sober, and I was just firmly planted in mid-earth. I was lost. And they asked for the new people's hands, and my hand just kind of went up all crippled and strange and limp. And I was just wishing to be invisible. And a woman in the middle of the room, somehow, the hand goes up, and she just turned around, and our eyes locked. And I thought, oh, no. And when the coffee break came, this woman started heading for me. And I would get more and more nervous. I probably thought she was going to hit on me, or something. The great I am, this bent, broken, it's mental illness. We have a physical allergy of the body coupled with a mental obsession of the mind, and it's a mental illness. We have alcoholism, is awful. untreated. It's just awful what my mind could do. Tell me. So I'm sitting there, and this woman's coming for me. And I was in the back. I was up against the wall in the back of this meeting. And there was a seat next to me, and she sat down, and she did this simple, human, lovely gesture. She put her arm around my shoulders. And it was the most phenomenal thing that had happened to me in a long time. And I couldn't say anything to her. I didn't cry. I held my attitude. And that arm didn't drop away. I didn't scare her for 1 minute. She just held my shoulder. It was incredible. And then she looked at me and she said it was going to be okay. And for some reason, the great I am, for just a second, believed her. And this program will come in like that sometimes. If I don't drink, no matter what, I always get what I need through this program, through the people of Alcoholics Anonymous, through the willingness to let someone put their arm around my shoulder and not run away. I'm a runner. I'm a cheat. I'm a liar. I'm in a fantasy land. I've always been in a fantasy land, and I came in from the cold into Alcoholics Anonymous. And the good news I hope that I can bring to you, if you're new or you're scared or you're thinking of leaving, is don't do it. Give God that one more chance, because this program is fabulous. It's fabulous. And we reconstruct people. I've been reconstructed. Look at me. I'm wearing a French poodle on my chest. This is not cool. And I'm happy about it. I tell you, it's just an amazing deal. It's an amazing deal. I was, I wasn't heading for here. I was an artiste. I was cool. I was an artiste. I was a musician. I was a singer. I was an actress forever, for as long as I could live. I was the youngest of 3 little girls, little Irish Catholic family. My dad died on the kitchen floor when I was 18 months old. And my mom gathered the little girls together in 1951, where it was hard to be a single mom, and she kept them together. They had lived in a fine home. My dad was a writer for the Los Angeles Times with a byline, and they had a big house full of writers and artists and other musicians, and the bishop came over, and there was a big classy deal, and she sold the house and moved into a little duplex in Glendale, put all the little girls in one end and rented out the other one. She kept us together, and she was a good mom, strong Irish mom. But I was the one with the guilt and the shame. The oldest feeling I can remember is that it's all my fault. And our book says, selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our troubles. And that's the oldest feeling I remember. It's up to me. That's a sensation, a truth that I always knew, it's all up to me. That thing gets so bad sometimes that I can remember years ago watching the news and having to turn off the news because I knew that if I'd been there, I could have stopped it. Ooh, So, but I felt so bad. I felt one of the feelings I brought into Alcoholics Anonymous was a feeling that I had killed my dad. I thought I had killed my dad. If I just hadn't been born, my dad wouldn't have died. I have no idea why I thought that. But feelings are very, very powerful, and convictions, and gradually we sort them out together in this program. It's incredible. And I brought that into AA, but I didn't kill my dad. My dad died on the kitchen floor, and my mom kept the girls together. I used to sing to comfort myself. Music was just a comfort to me, and I was like the youngest in the family, and sometimes the youngest, they are the entertainers, they are the clowns. They try to keep everybody happy. And I was always trying to cheer my mom up. I thought that was my job. And I just tried to not make waves. But inside I had all the mishmash that we have. I had a gift for music and imagination, and I just kind of lived up there, and I went to Catholic school. And finally that day came, that golden age of 13. Something happens to a lot of alcoholics at 13. My theory is it's all about puberty. Because puberty's hard on earth people, too. It is. When you're 13, aliens invade your bedroom and they take your brain. And when you're 18, they're supposed to bring it back. But I think mine's still on the mothership or something. I'm still waiting. But I just started, my anger just came out, and I rebelled completely. And I really identify with rebellion. I identify with those feelings today. I still have them. I'm still childlike, grandiose, and immature. And I guess I'm just always going to be that way, you know. But it doesn't have to drive my life today, and it doesn't have to push people away or hurt people today. And that's the big difference about what it's like to be recovered and know yourself and act the right way. But when I was 13, I just struck out. I got mad at all the good people. I got mad at all the lies. I got mad at society. I started working on this business of being a victim by looking at all the flaws out there. And I hated being lied to, you know. And I thought, they're lying about God. We don't even look like this family on TV. You know, how come my mom has to work so hard? How come? I was full of these questions. And you know, I was just mad. And I started running around with the other gangsters at Catholic school. Yeah. And I started having some fun because I was mad. And I didn't want to be good. Being good was boring. But I wanted to have some fun. I wanted to feel good. And so I ran with them, and they thought I was funny. And they told me how to shave my legs. They told me about boys, because I grew up with women, you know, Catholic women. So they told me about boys, and I thought, wow, that's cool. Movie magazines, smoking cigarettes. And one morning we stole some vodka from my best friend's mom and went to the bathroom, mixed those drinks, and I was in public school the next year. And I started breaking my mom's heart. And I became a thief, a chronic thief. I used to shoplift and steal. I'll always be making amends for that. I really stole a lot. But you know, I never took from people, single people, people I knew. I had an ethic about my stealing. I would steal from institutions because I figured they deserved it, you know. Institutions like the Broadway, Sears, you know. I just got that habit. And I started ditching school all the time because, you know, I didn't want to live like that. I wanted to live. I was starting to build this world about who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be doing. And then the 60s were exploding, and I loved that. God, that was great. You know, everyone knows that story. The culture is everything's changing. Everybody's mad. Everybody has an axe to grind. You know, everybody's protesting, and I loved that. I loved to protest. I didn't know much about what was going on, but I just, if somebody was a victim, I got with them and said, "Yeah, me too. Give us ours." A lot of drugs on those pieces. I was just like, "Yeah, let's go march for that." Good. Count me in. And the best discovery I made when I was 14 years old, when I say that number, I just can't believe it, but I started running away to Hollywood, and I got into the coffee houses in Hollywood in the 60s, which were not Starbucks. No, they were real dens of debauchery, you know. It's just like really little sticky joints. Well, yeah. Let's go. And it was smoky and dark. You know, I remember the sticky part. It used to stick to the furniture. And it was dark in there. But the biggest thing was the people, because the people were so great, these coffee houses. And, you know, they were artists and writers and musicians and young and hip and political people and And they were the other outsiders, many of them, the other losers, many of them, people like me. In fact, as I came to in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was looking around meetings one day. I realized that you were them. Just a lot like an AA meeting. It was a before picture, right? It was the after picture. They told me that, when I got to AA, they said, "Who do you think we are?" Oh. I said, "We're the people you drank with. We're the people you drank with." And that has proved to be true. But I didn't know that. The greatest thing that was going on then, of course, was music, and I just loved it. The birds were getting 8 miles high, and we'd just hang out in these dark places and sing all this radical stuff, and everything was breaking loose, and, Puff the Magic Dragon. It was really... And I was always in trouble. And I loved it. And I loved going to these places and doing it. When I was a senior, I was talking to my car. My car was my only friend. And I met a bunch of musicians in a coffee house. And they were wild. They were pre the word multicultural. It was like this mini United Nations, And it really was. Everybody, every skin color, every ethnicity. And they played all these musical instruments, and we went from, like Chuck Berry and that one microphone in the middle of the room, right, three guitars and drums, to this explosion in the 60s, and things kind of keep going around and around in a circle now. But then it was the first time, and it was the first time, there's that excitement of the first time. And this group of musicians, they played everything, ranging from bongos to a cello, and a flute, and piano and a guitar and a violin, and they had a paraplegic in the wheelchair who played the cymbals. He didn't play my time and nobody cared. I loved this group, and I just stood up and I started singing with them. I just stood up and I just started singing with them. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. And they really liked it, and we did that for a long time. There were 26 of them. We actually gigged once, but it was so hard to stop and start. We were innately doomed. And they were called Jay Walker and the Pedestrians. And I was bumped through Glendale High School, bumped out of there, and 8 of us broke away from Jay Walker, and we set up in a little house in Silver Lake. And I want to tell you about this little house because right there on Griffith Park Boulevard, the sign over the front door said, "Anthony's Lawnmower and TV Repair." And when you walked in that first place, which was the shop, you'd see floor-to-ceiling TVs of every vintage and every state of repair and disrepair, and lawnmowers and radios and the little cats scurrying around on the floor. And there was a guy in the corner. This guy was there for years. He always had a cigarette hanging out here. And he was always soldering the same thing. That's all he did. He just said, "Oh." He was always there. And then you walked through the next door into this little sunny kitchen. In the kitchen, there was always wine on the table and coffee on the stove. And there were pictures, floor-to-ceiling pictures of all the kids on one side. And a little Italian family from the old country, Anthony. And their son was one of the musicians in Jay Walker. And we took these 8 big, strapping young musicians, and we all stuffed them in the little living room, which was the next room. I mean, really, there wasn't room for the singer. They put the microphone for me out in the kitchen. And they looked at me, and they just loved me. And I looked at that wall of photographs and this family and this mom and this dad, and I felt, wow. And that was the beginning of the group. And we started in this little place in Silver Lake, and we formed, and I was a part of a family, and they looked at me, and they just loved me. They thought I was beautiful. Wow. And I believe today that God saved me from maybe some dark choices I probably would have made if it weren't for music. But that music then just gave me this feeling like, wow, there is something I can do. And we wrote 3 45-minute sets, and we went on the road in rock and roll instead of going to college like earth people do. Right, boom, bang, we were out there. We had our first gig opening for Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Man, and it was big stuff then. One night, 11 record companies showed up to bid for us. Wow, it was big stuff. And of course, what happened inside of me was I had I don't have any tools. I don't know how to handle this stuff. So what do? I drink, I use drugs, but I don't have any tools. And so what I had inside of me were two contradictory states of being. As we got more and more successful, because we flew all over the country, we played all the big rock and roll rooms, we played all those big pop festivals when they were just new. We were the first band to take the stage at Woodstock, and they cut us out of that Woodstock movie. That's only funny in AA, by the way. When I tell Earth people that, they go, oh, that's too bad. In AA, they go, oh, isn't that funny? We are so weird in the best way, huh? But anyway, I want to tell you about how it was inside of me, because inside, on the one hand, I felt arrogant, like, oh, I showed you, you missed out on the rock star, nay. But you know what? I had the opposite feeling, too. And I could be ticked into either one with just a look. And the other feeling was terror that you would find out I was no good at all. And our book talks about this. Our book talks about it. It says, we either have to be on top or we're on the bottom of the heap, the doormats, on top or down here. I had to learn all about the middle in AA. I had to learn all about moderation. I had to learn how to be a friend among friends here. I didn't have the vaguest notion of that then. I was either up here or I was down here. And if I could drink, I could just anesthetize, sort of table the whole business with alcohol in me. We learned to stop. We stop growing when we start drinking, and then it starts all over in here. You get a chance to grow. You get a chance to. I remember they told me when I got sober, they said, you're going to meet somebody you've never known. And I looked around, because I want to meet, the president of AA, whoever that was. They were talking about, you get to meet yourself, and it's a gradual process. Anyway, we're flying around the country. We're having all this success. We were at Woodstock 4 months after Woodstock. 3 days after we were on the Red Skelton show, which was a big TV show then, I was hit by a drunk driver on a rainy night in December. And he made an accordion out of my car, and my life changed forever. I pushed that Buick Steel up 6 inches with my head, and they took me to Glendon Memorial Hospital. On the one night of the month when all the neurologists in Southern California are having their meeting, all the head doctors, the cream of the crop, they all worked on me, and they all said, this girl will not live. No one can survive a blow like that. And I think that they're all dead. Don't we laugh at weird stuff around here? I came out of that coma, and I had brain damage. It's over. I'm okay. Yeah, you might not feel that way, but reason I like to talk about that when I'm asked to share is because there might be somebody here who has something that the doctors tell you will always have. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the truth for you or not, but I do want to tell you that with my experience, I came into this fellowship with brain damage from this accident, and I was supposedly to have it for the rest of my life. And when I was 6 years sober, I went to my usual appointment with a neurologist for my brainwave readout, and they read my brainwaves, and they looked just like Earth people's. And I had recovered from it. And it took 6 years of the good life in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have recovered from that. I tell you that because that is maybe hopeful for someone. I don't know. But if you stay in your seat, if you carve out your place in this outfit, anything can happen. I also permanently lost the use of one of my vocal cords in this accident. I had 6 operations on my throat. What could be worse for me? I don't think that there could have been a worse thing, just with earthly eyes, right? That's the only thing I love, and it was gone. But I was an alcoholic, and I had good alcoholic skills, and I had good ways of not even looking at that, because that was so bad. I wasn't going to look at that. You know how we are. I had 6 operations on my throat. I got out of the hospital, and I would not believe that I couldn't sing again because I couldn't stand that. I just knew that they didn't know what they were talking about. I started working with a doctor and a coach, and I started getting a style. Train my voice, train my 1 vocal cord to do the work of 2, and it took a long time. The band was so traumatized by this, too. They loved me. They treated me like a princess. I know all the stereotypes of rock and roll, but I was really treated very, very well by this band. And they really loved me, and they were devastated, too, because they were almost there, too. We were the almost rock stars. We were right at the turnstile. We were waiting to go through, you know. We were Bobby McGee. Come on, we were ready. We're next. And we didn't get to go then. And so they were devastated, too. We put together 2 more albums, and then we broke up, and what I said with my big, sick ego, I said, good, I don't need them, they're holding me back. Of course, I said it with my broken voice, I don't need them, they're holding me back. And I went off into Hollywood to make my way, to carve it out. And I had a new style that I got through this work with a coach, and I had this kind of cracky voice that I talk with, and I learned how to sing again, sing differently, got a new record deal, and it didn't work. It didn't fix me. But I couldn't look at that. I didn't know ready to look at that. Couldn't be true. I was in People magazine, that album came out, and I went on a little tour, and it didn't work. And a year later, that company went belly up, and and I dug in some more. You know how we do. One more time. The almost people. I almost kept the house. I almost kept the spouse, the job. I was an almost rock star. I couldn't stand it. Couldn't look at it. Went off, and the record company got belly up. I was tired of musicians. The literature talks, we don't know how to be a friend among friends. We don't know how to be a worker among workers. I didn't know how to be a musician among musicians. So I started playing my own piano. I met a bass player who smoked a lot of pot, lost the power of speech, so he was good. Get out there, try booking myself around. Now I'm a big, tall lush, fat, sweaty lush at the piano, but I didn't know that, and things got worse and worse and worse. Our book talks about female alcoholics go down quickly sometimes, quickly fall apart. And that was happening to me. It seemed like the worse I got, the more I thought it was them. It was a strange relationship, that perspective. The worse I got, the more I didn't know it. Oh, man, I got hurt. Whatever profession you're in, at the end of your drinking, isn't it awful? Isn't it awful? The things we do and say. I remember hearing myself like I split off. There's a word for this. Split off, and I'm watching myself talk, and I'm going, you're really saying that, aren't you? Pow! Oh, no. It's like, and I don't know who this is anymore. But I have to drink every single day and every single night. I was worried about my image, however. So I got a secretary who drank like me. And we just drank together. There was no business. Actually, she had a temporary office business. So I just said, let's put a phone in there. If it rings, say my name. You'll be my secretary. Okay. So one day, there was no business. No one called. Believe me, no one called. I was having trouble getting gigs at the Ice House, So anyway, but I didn't know that because of that weird perspective. The worse I got, the more I thought it was everyone else, And that's what crazy people are like. Did you know that? Everybody's crazy, thinks everyone else is crazy. And that's where I was. Well, my secretary got sick one day after a harmless champagne party. And that had lasted for 2 weeks. Anyway, she got really sick. And I thought, helping her, which, drunks helping drunks. We do this out there, too. And I'm helping her. She ought to join my health club. And the next day she called and said she'd gone to AA. And that was the beginning of my long, lonely trek in here, because when she said she joined AA, I said, you're fired. And then just me and those gay guys that I told you about in the beginning. And the trouble got infinitely worse, geometrically worse. I mean, there were just terrible things that happened. And you know what I mean. And eventually I went to a meeting of AA and hated it. And I had my eye that I told you about, and I I had a conversation with someone at Central Office that brought me to that meeting, and I didn't stay sober then, but I left with something. I left with the picture of the woman leading the meeting that day, and she was absolutely beautiful, and she was happy. And I heard the laughter, and I left with that. I left with her, and I see her in my mind's eye whenever I share, because that was the message. Sometimes our 12th step is how we are and how we look and how we do. And every person in this room tonight is important because of the sum of the parts in that. And you don't know who's looking at you. I don't know the name of that woman I saw that day, but the look of her and who she was brought me back to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I came back that first day of sobriety, June 28, 1976, in my bikini. I didn't know if I needed a meeting or a tan. I went to a noon meeting. I remember thinking how early noon meetings were, so it was really hard for me to get out at noon. And I was early. I didn't want to miss it, so I got there at 10:30, and it was a gardener's day to clip the grass at this church. So I lay down on the grass because I was sleepy. No sense of where I am or who you are. So it's like everything has got to be for my convenience. And I walked into this meeting with all these grass clippings sticking to my big, fat middle. You know, I was like, and I'm resenting that you know I'm new, you know. When Sierra took her shift tonight, it reminded me of the emotions that I felt, because it seemed to me that she was experiencing some moment there. And I remember when this first day, it was a 12-step study, and they had that book going around, and I remember that book coming my way, and I remember that it was more frightening than Woodstock. To say, I'm Nancy, and I'm an alcoholic. To take that first step in some way, even if I don't really mean it, you know, but to just say those words, like alcoholic. It's a lot of syllables. It's a long way to fall in my ego. But you know, I'm so glad that you have offered me your hearts and your stories and your soul and your support and the steps and the love here, because it works. It really does. I came to in a meeting laughing when I had 55 days of sobriety. I'll never forget this big sound. It was like a rumble in the room. I thought, what's going on? And it was me laughing. I realized then that I'd lost my laughter to the bottle. And you put it back. You showed me how to laugh. You've taught me how to wear a dress, how to come, how to be there for somebody. You know, to come to a meeting, be here for somebody, do the right thing. You know, sometimes it's not about me. Whoa! It's not? Yeah. You taught me how to be a player in someone else's life. And that's big. That's really big. I remember taking that inventory for the first time with my sponsor. And that was when I learned how important the traditions are. Isn't that funny? It's a funny thing to tell you, isn't it? But I want to explain that a little bit, because I was used to paying people to listen to me. I had been in therapy since I was 15 years old. Since I was 15 years old. When I got sober, I was 26. I'm 53 years old tonight. To save you from thinking about that. And I'm happy about that. Isn't that amazing? But I was 26 years old, and I was sharing this inventory with my sponsor, and I was used to paying people to listen to me. But my sponsor is a whole different thing now. And I have this garbage written out in my lap, and I'm in her AA home. And the sun is streaming through the French windows, and the cats are stretched out, and there's steam rising from the teacup. It's like a real scene. And here was this woman ready to receive this, to do this step with me, because she wanted me to get sober and stay sober. And it just hit me that this was not something that you could buy. That you can't buy sobriety. It's not for sale. You can't buy the steps. They're not for sale. You do them, and you have them. And this woman was there. And it was that 8th tradition, you know, that we are non-professional. Alcoholics Anonymous is made of non-professionals. And sometimes that's the very best, especially for me. You know, it says we are people who need a meaty message. We know a con artist when we see him, don't we? And this woman was there just because she wanted the best for me. And I tell you, it was amazing to me. And I shared that with her, and it was difficult. You know, I'm a phony, and I'm a performer, but this was the real deal. And it was real important to me. And you know, when I left that place, I began to experience the promises in our book that happened right after this step. And the first one says, after taking this step, he said, the very first one is, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye at last. And I remember walking out of her home and being able to stand up and feel this light thing happen and move on through those steps and through those immense steps. And my amends in the music business were really hard for me to make. I didn't want to make them because it was like the center of me, and I was trying to put it off. And sure enough, one night, anger moved in, and God gave me the knowledge that if I didn't make them, I would have to drink again because of this deep anger. And I'm grateful for that. And I moved on. I got hooked up. I got in an AA relationship right away because I was just trying to figure out what to do. You know, I didn't want to go back to music because I was afraid. I thought I blew that. I was ashamed. And I got in an AA relationship, and you know, he was cute. And we moved in together after our first date. we went roller skating and moved in together the next day. And I was like, that was it. So I'll think I'll try this. I'll try to be I'll be somebody's woman. Let me see how that works. And we moved down to Laguna Beach when we were in our third year of sobriety, and I was active, and I sponsored women, and I've loved this program. I've never taken any time off from AA. I've never taken any time off from AA. Why would I? Did I ever take time off from my disease? From a drink? No. And I've always made it, because I believed what they said, and I've had the experience that bad things pass in this program. When sometimes you have to hang on like crazy, and sometimes you don't have to believe it, but you have to hang on. You know, I learned that mechanical prayer even works. If you're really there, do something, that works. God help me, that works. As long as I don't drink or use, and I stay close. We moved down to Laguna Beach, and we weren't getting along very well. So we woke up one day and we said, we're not getting along very well, let's get married. You see how we are? See how we laugh? Are we strange? We laugh at this stuff. Earth people go, oh, really? That's terrible. Both of my feet were broken and operated on, and I had to get off the AA road. My husband was going crazy, and the AA women started to surround me because I couldn't run away. Remember I told you I'm a runner? You know, I know, and because my feet were broken, they came and they showed me what it meant to be a loving member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they showed me. I remember when I was 5 years sober, my sponsor gave me a pocketbook. Now, I've been dragging around these hippie bags, you know, tie-dye and all that. She gave me a pocketbook, something that would go with a French poodle. But I remember looking at this thing going, "What? This is a pocketbook, you know, where's my hippie bag?" And just little touches, like little loving touches, you know, and you can do what you want with the pocketbook, but here it's for you. And eventually I got on my feet again, and my husband got drunk, and then my husband went away. And there I was in Laguna Beach. I had no job skills. My resume said Woodstock and AA. And I couldn't work at a regular job. You remember I told you how annoyed sentences made me. I'm 5 years sober, and I still don't know sentences. I still don't know how to hang out and just be calm. I started cleaning houses, and I wasn't very good at it, and I needed money, and I went back to college for money. And at last, My defects, God used them and they became kind of like an asset, because the only thing I knew was how to go to a meeting. I told you I knew how to come and be responsible and be there. I knew how to do that, and I knew that taught me how to go to school, because you have to act like that in school and you'll do fine. Just show up, sit in front, ask questions. And that was the beginning for me. I got these degrees, and I became a college teacher, college English teacher. Go figure. We rebuild people here. We do it all the time. It's one of the things that I do, but it isn't who I am. I am an alcoholic, sober, happy woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And some of the things I do, I go to these colleges and I teach them English, and they give me money. But I am a sober, happy alcoholic woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, a few years went by of teaching. I started teaching in 1989, and I cleaned houses my first 5 years, and I just loved it. I loved learning. And our literature talks about this. It says that the world's libraries are treasure troves for seekers. You know, and when I can't get to meetings, sometimes I read the grapevine. I read our literature. It's a meeting in print. You know, it says the world's libraries are treasure troves for seekers. And I can be useful in God's world, because it's God's world. Hello, it wasn't Nancy's world. What a great blessing it is to really learn that. I got back together a few years ago, and there's only 3 of us alive from the old band. And we're fatter, and we have less hair, but I think music is the last thing to leave you. And we sing together. We had our first gig in San Diego at the International Convention. Isn't that funny? So the other 2 are Earth people. In fact, I'll tell you that the bass player, I'm telling on Fred right now, but Fred, our bass player, Sweetwater's bass player, although these many years, never even smoked a cigarette. We used to go on the road, and he would go to Mass on Sundays. You had to hide a guy like that in the 60s. But the benefit of the good Catholic is they remember everything. And so, they tell you everything that happened. But as I stood on that stage, and it was in the park at the International Convention in San Diego, and there were just a few people there, because the guys that invited us forgot to advertise, so no one knew we were there. But there were a few alcoholics there, and it was a beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon, and the water was sparkling behind us, and the sun was shining, and I looked out at the faces of my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got this feeling that God just said to me, "Look at what I've given you, kid. Look at how much there is around you." And you loved us then and followed us through all that. They told me when I got here that whatever you did drinking, you will have a chance to do it again, a chance to get it right, sober, if you stick with us. And for me, that was true with music. And I thought that it was gone, and it wasn't. And so that is one of the thoughts I want to leave you with, because my time is up. I'm really talking to it. The prophet Khalil Gibran said that when you're born, your work is placed in your heart. And little have I known until these last years that my life is with you. And the work that I do, I'm not even sure what it is. But as long as I do what we do, inside and outside of these rooms, everything is good. Even the seemingly bad is good. So thank you for your eyes and your wonderful laughter. And Happy New Year.